Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the H.V.M.N. podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Lat Mansour, a PhD in physiology, anatomy, and genetics, and the research lead of health via modern nutrition. And if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a review. And if you have any question, leave us a comment. And as always, we appreciate it if you can share it with a friend. Now, without further ado, let's get into this episode of H.V.M.N. podcast. Today, we have Dave Asprey on the Health via Modern Nutrition podcast. Thank you very much for coming, Dave.
I'm really happy to be here. You were just on my show. We get to talk about all the cool stuff.
Yes, and as usual, before I introduce Dave, we're going to take a shot of Ketone-IQ right here.
Oh, you're going to make me drink this ketone ester stuff?
No, this is not ketone ester. The ketone ester stuff that you tried were generation 1. This is the new stuff.
That stuff tasted like ass.
Yeah,
Am I going to be sad when I drink this?
No, you won't, because this is what we have improved and, both flavor and the price.
All right, I'm going to drink this, but...
Drink, it's. I promise you, it tastes
right.
significantly better. Cheers.
Cheers.
There you go. See? Not that bad.
Grimace. Of course I see. I'm just giving you a hard time. Your ketone ester, the 1.0, man, you had to really, really be desperate to get your ketones up because that stuff tasted so strong. This stuff is so mild. I actually take it every time I fly. So I was just giving you a hard time.
Yeah, that's good.
It's not new to me. Guys.
Okay. So you've tasted it. So that's good.
It's mild enough that I could take it and then talk with you right now. And the old stuff, you take it and you're like...
You got to wait a few seconds. Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of like punching yourself in the face. This stuff is... I like it. It's very usable. I really mean that. Every single time I fly, I take one every 2 hours.
Thank you. No, and this is exactly what I spoke about when Dave interviewed me on his show just last week.
Yep.
So, if you guys want to check it out, we talk about the difference between ketone ester and Ketone-IQ. What is R-butyranediol? What are the differences between the use cases? And also different forms of exogenous ketones other than ketone ester and Ketone-IQ.
Like the cocaine ketones were a really big innovation. Thank you for talking about those on my show.
Yeah, exactly. Check it out. So just as an introduction, I'm sure Dave does not need any formal introduction here. He is the founder of Upgrade Labs, and he is also known as the father of biohacking. Now, let's start with that, shall we? Why are you known as the father of biohacking? Let's walk us through your journey thus far.
Sure. It's because I created the field of biohacking. I went through this time as a computer hacker in Silicon Valley. I weighed 300 pounds, and I was having serious cognitive dysfunction. My doctors just couldn't help me. I went to a bunch of them, and they were useless. I made and lost $6 million before I was 30. So I managed to spend some money on doctors. It didn't matter. I just always felt exhausted. My career was taking off, but my health was aiming towards the ground and turning on the afterburners. So I started hanging out with people 3 times my age who were getting younger. And these were early anti-aging people at a nonprofit in Silicon Valley. Eventually, they asked me to be the chairman and president of the organization. So I'm like, I get to learn from my elders, and these people have more energy than I do anyway. So I learned all these crazy things I thought were impossible. And then I started sharing them with other people. I eventually said, I'm going to find a name for this. And I had this dream. I'm going to take the bodybuilding community. And these guys are great biohackers. I mean, they're all about, I'm going to take control of my biology. But I wanted neuroscientists because I was also hacking my brain with electricity. And I wanted my anti-aging friends in there. And I realized we were united by one thing. And it was a desire to control our biology. It wasn't even about personal development, although that's a part of it. It was like, why, when I want to turn on my brain, will it not turn on? Why, when I want to have pants that fit, do they not fit? Like, what's going on here? And that brought all this together. What I did is I went on a 3-month sabbatical. And I wanted to learn meditation from the masters in Tibet and Nepal. So I traveled there. And I just thought about it for 3 months. I thought, what is the right name? It's not health, because frankly, I don't really want health. I want something so much more than health, that health is like table stakes and boring. I don't want to be average health.
Interesting.
I want to actually have superpowers. I want laser eyeballs. It might take me a while to get there. I might not get there, but I still want it. But I don't wake up in the morning going, today I just want to be average. Because that's what health is. Today I want to be way, way better than that. I don't want to meditate on being enough. I want to meditate on being so much more than enough that I can change the world and have a party when I'm done. Like that. And I think I'm not alone in that, right? So I started learning this stuff, and I did lose my 100 pounds. And I did have to create a new dietary structure that has helped people lose 2 million pounds since then. But I didn't trademark the name biohacking because I wanted it to be a global movement, so we would have a name for us. I started a conference back in, I think, 2010 or probably 2011. And it was the first ever biohacking conference, and 100 people showed up, including a couple influencers who immediately branded themselves as biohackers and copied every single blog post on my
There you go.
as will happen. And at this event, we used the electricity to shock ourselves, and we had all these speakers about this crazy stuff. And the next year, it was 1,000, and it kept growing from there and growing and growing. This year, biohackingconference.com, we're expecting up to 5,000 people in June in Florida. All vendors, all the toys for changing your state all together. And part of that state is certainly changing your nutrient availability, the type of nutrients.
I feel like I should be speaking at that conference.
I'll hook you up with my conference team. I have a whole team. This is a major event that, 5,000 people is very meaningful. And we have hundreds of vendors. And you can go and you can talk to the founders, and they're like right there, and you get to like touch and feel and play and then meet with all these people who care about being more than average. And it feels very different. I did this and I made it cool. And I did it in a language that was written for Silicon Valley tech entrepreneurs, because that's what I was. And no one ever talked to me. I don't want to be a balloon animal. I don't want to get swole. And if you're listening to this and you're that, dude, that's cool. And like, I actually respect your ability to do that. I'm running around 8% body fat now, and my bone density is probably higher than yours. And I carry enough muscle that I think I'm at the longevity angle where you don't want too much, but you don't want too little. And I'm constantly playing. My biological age is 11 and a quarter years younger than my chronological age. Mm-hmm. My brain speed is that of an 18-year-old, and it's called a P300D as a measure, instead of that of someone who's way more than 18, and it typically declines over time. My arterial flexibility is that of a 24-year-old, mm-hmm. less than half my age, my chronological age, which I don't even identify with. Because we live in a world where you can identify as whatever you want. So I identify as 27% of my minimum effective lifespan.
Interesting. So, okay, let's unpack this a little bit. You mentioned you went to meditate and all of that, and you went on a journey, and you managed to lose your 100 pounds. What was the key measure? Well, what was the key effort that made you lose that weight? Was it just exercise? Was it diet? Was it mental? Was it perspective change? What was it?
Let me talk about the new book. I'm in the middle of publishing it right now.
That's the
part of that.
One of the main conversation in
Sure.
Today's discussion actually. That's okay. Dave's new book. So
and it's to answer your question about how I did that.
Yeah.
So the book is called Smarter, Not Harder. And one of the first things I did is I said, all right, I'm in my early 20s. I weigh 300 pounds. I've had 2 knee surgeries. I don't want another knee surgery. So the most important thing in my life is going to be exercise and diet. And I'm going to lose the weight. I'm going to put all of my effort behind it. Ahead of dating, and if you've ever tried dating in your early 20s, that's kind of important. Ahead of studies, ahead of career, ahead of friends, it didn't matter. Like, if I was sick, if I was in the hospital, I was going to go to the gym. And I did. I did 90 minutes a day, 6 days a week, half weights, half cardio. The cardio was 15% incline, wearing a weighted pack, walking as fast as I could for 45 minutes. And the weights, I got to the point after 18 months where I could max out all but 2 of the machines at the gym. And the 2 I was close to maxing, but my shoulders don't like overhead press. So you'd think I would be a wall of muscle, right? I still had a 46-inch waist. I was still fat. I still weighed 300 pounds. I was strong, but I was fat. And I was sitting at Carl's Jr. with my friends, and they're all thin, and they're eating double Western bacon cheeseburgers with fries. And I'm like, I'll have the chicken salad, no dressing. Oh, and no chicken, because chicken's just too many calories. I'm really trying to cut my calories, and I'm hungry all the time, like gnawing hunger and eating, like chewing on that NutraSweet aspartame gum, like because at least there's something in there, like gnawing hunger, drinking ice water. Well, I thought to myself, I must be eating too much lettuce.
Okay.
I'm not trying hard enough. Because this is what they tell you. Those mean calorie trolls, they're still out there. Calories in, calories out. You can cancel out a Snickers bar with a diet soda. They have no clue how biology works. So finally, I reached the point where I just had to acknowledge this isn't working. And I said, I'm going to do what works. So I wrote Smarter, Not Harder, in part because I wasted 702 hours of my life in the gym and I didn't get the results I wanted. And it's because I had some false assumptions about how biology works that most of us share. So in Smarter, Not Harder, I introduced the concept of slope of the curve biology, which sounds quite academic. And it is on some level, but it's easy to understand. And we like to believe, because of just an intellectual shortcut that our bodies will make for us to save energy in our thoughts, we like to believe that doing more of something makes us stronger. It's a very simple thing. It's just wrong.
If something is good for you, then surely if I do more of that thing, it would be better, even better for you.
Right.
And that's one thing we talk about quite a lot on this show, where when it comes to biology, when it comes to metabolism, when it comes to human physiology, we are not looking at more is better. We're looking at the Goldilocks zone, which is the optimal level at pH, temperature. All of these environments need to be in an optimal range for our bodies to perform optimally. But yeah, sorry.
If you were to think like a calories in, calories out troll, they'd be like, heat good for you. So they would go sit in a blast furnace until they were burned into a crisp, because there's just massive intellectual black holes and blind spots in what they're representing. So what slope of the curve biology says is that it's not area under the curve. It's not the amount of effort that causes biological change effectively. It's actually the slope of the curve up, and very importantly, the slope of the curve down. So that if you can turn a signal on, and I talk about 5 different areas where you might want to apply hacks in your life with slope of the curve hacks. And if you can turn it on really quickly, but then turn it off really quickly, then you get rapid adaptation. But if you turn it on really quickly, like you sprint for a minute and then you go, well, I'm strong, I'm just going to run at 70% of what I can do for a long period of time, it's going to kick your ass. And then your body is going to be sort of stunned and go, well, okay, I'll adapt to that at some point, but first I got to recover, right? So one of the examples in the book is a type of AI-driven cardio training that we do at Upgrade Labs. Upgrade Labs is my biohacking lab. I started it 8 years ago under Arnold Schwarzenegger's office. We're opening franchises across the country. You go to ownandupgradelabs.com, and you can have one in your neighborhood. But the idea is we've got all the tech. I talk about the tech and many, many non-tech things in the book. But with this technology, if you do 5 minutes of exercise that doesn't require any sweat and isn't even hard, 3 times a week to get that slope of the curve signal into the body, you will get in about 6 to 8 weeks about a 12% improvement in VO2 max. That is astounding. And if you were to instead go to a spin class where someone's going to like wear spandex and yell at you while you sweat for 45 minutes, you do that 5 days a week, you will see a 2% improvement. So you're getting 6 times more improvement in a tiny fraction of the time, and no one had to yell at you while you were sweating. So I think this is worthy of people's time and effort and consideration. And the reason for that is that it's one where you intentionally lower your respiratory rate. Then you full on out for 10 seconds, and then, and this is the trick, as fast and as gently as possible, return to baseline. And the body's like, oh, sometimes I'm going to come right to the edge of disequilibrium, right to the edge of breaking, but I'm not going to break. But then I'm safe afterwards, and I have so much energy now. Why don't I apply that energy to fixing it versus burning all the energy up on something because, well, I wanted to, grunt a lot, and it's really important to sweat. So it's an example of the tech. But there's 2 other concepts in the book that I think your listeners would really, really love. One of them is I bring in this idea of a meat operating system. So your tissues have their own desires and their own behaviors entirely separate and invisible to you, or separate from and invisible to you. So when I snap my fingers, with almost no lag time, just the speed of sound, you hear that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's totally not true. There is, for the average person, about a third of a second between when a sound happens and when your brain gets the first electrical signal of the sound. It's called P300D. And then after that, you think about the sound for some amount of time. Then you decide what it is and run a pattern recognition against it. Oh, that was the sound of snapping fingers. Now, to you and me, it feels like there's no lag time in reality.
Correct.
But there is. It's provable. And it gets longer with age. My lag time is still a quarter second like an 18-year-old because my brain is hacked. And the average person every year gets a little bit slower. And by the time you're in your upper 80s, if you haven't taken care of yourself, it might even be 400 milliseconds. That's almost a half a second. And that's a sign that you're getting cognitive dementia and that your brain is really starting to fail. So why is it invisible, and who made it invisible? Well, there's another consciousness in that meat suit of ours, and it's designed to take away things that don't matter in the environment around us so we don't have to see them. It's also, and you probably know this from your studies, in the middle of each eye, right in the center, there's a dime-sized piece of reality you can't see, a blind spot that's there. Totally invisible. It's edited out of your reality by an automated system that is part of you that you don't control. Well, what else does the automated system do? Well, it does all sorts of stuff, and it does it all before we can think, and it's all invisible by design because it's part of the elegant way we interface with reality. We don't actually see even a tiny fraction of reality, even with all of our senses. We see a picture of reality. Just like when you look at a map, you don't see Los Angeles, you see a picture of Los Angeles, because if you saw all of Los Angeles, why would you need the map? So we're having a tiny sliver of reality, and our operating system decides what inputs it's going to allow us to see. But we get to decide what inputs it gets that cause it to adapt automatically.
Okay.
And so that's a very important part of biohacking. We're playing with our operating system even though we're sitting on top of it, even though it can control what we see. And one of the most precious things the operating system does for us that's driven our success as a species is something that all species do, but particularly humans. It makes us lazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes us lazy for a strategic reason, because we might run out of food. And if you waste food by doing things that require more energy, like exercise for no good reason, there's no tiger chasing you while you're running. If you do that, we might run out of food and then you might die. And it's really, really worried a tiger's going to eat you or you're going to starve. So what it does is it instills an outsized benefit. So it feels good to be lazy. And that's just to keep you alive. Your body has no clue that you're in there. It doesn't even like it that you're in there. Your body's like, let me run this. I got this. Like, what, you thought you want me to pay attention? No. Like, let's pay attention to the ice cream because there's lots of calories in there. And let's pay attention to the couch because it requires the least amount of energy. And then as good humans, I have grit and I built habits and I overcome my inherent laziness, which makes me a good person. Well, yeah, you can do that. I also have lots of studies that show your meat operating system is what controls mitochondrial function, which gives you the electricity that powers your willpower. Mm-hmm. So if you think you're going to use willpower to overcome your meat operating system, it will just turn off the lights. You're not going to win over time. And there are many, many studies that show that willpower fatigue is a real thing. So you could say, well, that's it. I'm an athlete. I worked up my willpower. I've got more willpower than everyone else on the planet. I'm so tough. I wake up at 4 a.m. Good for you. It's just taken a lot of your life to do that. And I would like to spend that time with my kids.
Right.
So laziness is what drives innovation.
I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge our sponsors of this show, Ketone-IQ, the best exogenous ketone you can take to elevate your blood ketone levels. I personally take it every day before a podcast to wire my brain up, before and after my workout to really feel my body. So give yourself a chance, take a shot, and you will feel the difference within minutes. So head over to hvmn.com and use the code HVMNPOD20, that is HVMNPOD20 for 20% off your purchase, and enjoy your Ketone-IQ and give your brain the perfect fuel. I mean, that makes sense from a biological point of view. We always go for the path with least resistance because our bodies, our cells, would generally prefer less resistance. It will prefer a more efficient way to either produce energy or use energy. And that is why we at H.V.M.N, we talk about exogenous ketones. We talk about ketones as an energy source and as a signaling molecule because it's much more efficient than the other substrates, i.e. like sugar or fats. And we have seen in studies as well that the brain and the heart would prefer ketones when they are available, showing that, like you said, whether we're conscious or not, these organs will take up ketones when they're available because they're more efficient, because they're least resistant. Now, you have given us a lot of information there. I'm going to start with the beginning first, when you talked about the upgrade labs and you talk about, low, sort of high intensity, but low frequency so that your body can go up to the brink of being broken, but quickly come down and recover. So does that mean that, to reaffirm that, is that the key to success there is essentially the intensity, yes, but also the frequency or the length, the period of time at which you are operating at high intensity? Is that the key?
It turns out the duration of time in those area under the curve is not particularly useful in most of the hacks that are here. What's most important is, so that would be in math, that's the integral, the area under the curve. What's most important is the derivative or the angle of the curve. So how fast could you turn it on? And this is something that's just not written about anywhere. How fast can you turn it off? And the metabolically healthiest things you'll see out there are animals on the savannah. And you'll see this if you watch one of those YouTube lions and tigers almost ate me channels. And you'll see a predator chases a zebra or something. Mm-hmm. And if it gets away, as soon as things are done, it looks around and the whole thing goes, it just shakes and it's dropping adrenal hormones there. And then it eats grass and it's done. Okay, that is a perfect slope of the curve workout, right? And it was the fact that it returned back to baseline.
Like nothing happened.
Yeah, like nothing happened. With humans, we don't do that unless we do it specifically using the hacks that are in Smarter Not Harder. And what usually ends up happening there is we don't run as fast as we could because we don't need to. Mm-hmm. And then after we run as fast as we could, we don't recover fully. We try to, because more is better, we try to, well, I'll just ride at 50% power, or I'll go lift some heavy stuff or something like that. And it turns out that interferes greatly with the signal. So what I'm saying is slope up and slope down matters far more than duration. Another couple variables that I talk about in the book, it also matters when you do it. So there's a circadian component. Doing heavy lifting or high intense intervals at 3 a.m. actually doesn't work very well. I think we all kind of intuitively know that, but there's science behind it. Mm-hmm. And then there's also how many times should you do it? Mm-hmm. And that usually requires university studies and algorithmic things. And people may say, well, Dave, you're just describing high intensity interval training. Actually, no, I'm not. And I've been a fan of, and I've talked about high intensity interval training for the last 12 years. I was a very early voice about this just being more effective. This is way more effective than HIIT. It's called reduced exertion, high intensity training. And it's very, very strange, but the intensity matters way more than the exertion. And it's counterintuitive, but that's just one example. In the book, I talk about these 5 domains. So about 8 years ago, I started Upgrade Labs. Mm-hmm. And this is underneath Arnold Schwarzenegger's office in Santa Monica. So lots of celebrities and famous people come there, and we help them with biohacking. So over time, I realized people come and say, I want to be healthy. What does that mean? Well, let me ask you that. What does healthy mean to you?
Quality of life, not having any debilitating diseases, feel good, so that's a subjective feel, and perform at a optimal level, how my body should be performing at my age with my demographics.
Got it. So if you were to, say, going to go work on your health, you would have no idea what to do. There was a long list of mushy things.
Yeah, and there was gonna be a couple with a long list of things that I could have done to sort of address each of them.
Got it. It could be a long list.
Yeah.
So what I found though is most people have too many things on their list. And
Exactly what I said. So that's why, like, if you say, give me one thing to work on my health, then the challenge comes in, right? So
it's a big challenge.
Yeah.
So what I did is I looked at all the data, and we have a lot of data that comes in from people because we're gathering information even about like bone density and inflammation levels and cellular electrical performance and things like that. There's 5 things that people really care about as their top level and 2 sort of rounding errors. And I structure the book this way. One of them is strength. So everyone has heard by now, your muscle mass really matters, and you need to have enough of it, but probably not too much. And you want to have this over time so that you don't age, you don't lose muscle mass with aging. So for some people, that's the goal. I want to get big, okay? Or I want to have junk in my trunk. That's another common one. But for other people, I want cardiovascular. I get tired all the time. I want my lungs to work better. I want to be better at that, okay? Different goals. In fact, they're opposing goals. You're not going to be good at marathons and be swole. It just doesn't work like that. In fact, you'll be less healthy if you run marathons versus get swole. And probably neither one of those is particularly healthy if you have too much muscle mass, because your cardiovascular risk goes up, right? Even though you're welcome to do either one, I support your ability. I think it's awesome, right? Like you choose your biology, you choose your expertise, and you choose the risks and rewards of however you tune your system. And that's what biohacking is about. And if you want to have 3 gonads, I support you there. Tell me how you did it, right? Seriously, like, it's your body. You do anything you want. Anyone who tries to stop you is your enemy, and that's fine. So now, what do they care about besides cardiovascular and muscle? They care about, I want my energy back, something you alluded to. And most people are feeling tired right now, more than ever before. So getting energy back, which is the same thing as weight loss. So those actually kind of go together. Because if you're putting electrons into fat and inflammation, you'll have low energy. So the techniques are almost the same for those 2. And then the other thing after this is cognitive performance. So in the book, I teach you things that make your brain work better in less time. And at Upgrade Labs, what we do is neurofeedback. We actually train people's brains using a system that I designed with 7 patents behind it for making your brain work better. And then the final thing after that is stress management. People actually want to be better at handling stress. And for the first time in all of recorded history, people are asking for stress management before they ask for weight loss. It's always weight loss is at the top, but not anymore. Because of what the government did to us around the world, or governments around the world did to us, our stress levels went through the roof. And since they don't care about stressing you out, now we're paying for the cause, or paying the cost of that. So once you have those 5 buckets, well, there's 2 other areas of interest that aren't primary focuses, but they're worth noting because I call them out as separate sections. One of them is sleep. I just can't sleep. And the other one is sex. I actually want to be better at sex, or I don't have, something's not working right. So those are sort of rounding things that happen. You fix the big 5, those other 2 get fixed automatically. And I structured the book that way, but for each of them, there are hacks. And I say, well, look, this is the way we did it. All of exercise, pick up rocks. You could concentrate the rocks into iron. That was our big innovation. That's pretty much it. Or run away from tigers. Then that's a spin class or a treadmill, whatever you want to call it. It turns out somehow in the last 30 years, but very especially in the last 5 to 10 years, all of this new knowledge has come out. So I go through each of these areas and tell you, look, this works better than the way you think it has to be. And I do it in order from this is free to this is actually inexpensive and very reachable. And this is what the crazy billionaires do. And for that stuff, maybe you're a crazy billionaire. There's plenty of those who listen, but more likely you're going to go to a facility like an Upgrade Labs. And I'm making these. We're rolling dozens of them out across the country as a franchise. Go to Own and Upgrade Labs for that. And the reason I think this really matters is that you can get results at home better than you would have for $50. Maybe you buy one of the pieces of very simple tech I talk about that just work better per minute than what you're doing today. Or maybe you get a membership somewhere. That would be awesome. But the reality is you shouldn't have to spend $1 million the way I did. And this book is my revenge for 702 hours of working out in the gym that didn't work. for having been forced to spend more than $1 million getting my health back and getting to where I am, it should not have cost that much. It's because this knowledge wasn't there or it wasn't equally distributed. So we can make this for everyone. The reason all of that matters is that I know that when we're at our full power, we're actually wired biologically in our meat operating system to be nice to each other. And it's one of the reasons I like what you're doing, because like you said, the body likes ketones and Ketone-IQ works. And when you have that extra electrical activity, especially in your neurons in the brain, your ability to self-regulate your emotions goes up. So ketosis in any form for short periods of time in the presence of carbohydrate regular consumption, it improves your personality, your kindness to others. I believe if you're in ketosis forever and you never get out of it, for most people, you start getting other things that makes it harder to just maintain that state of peace and kindness. So I'm a huge fan of cycling ketones. I'm a huge fan of having ketones present when I eat carbs, which I do with Ketone-IQ and with MCT oil, and like there's a variety of technologies for that. But this is the right one. If you're like, I'm just gonna have whatever, but I want my ketones up, this works very, very reliably and strongly, but not too strongly.
Right.
So, but you do that in the context of biohacking. And funny enough, if you're doing that, all the other biohacks get easier because having enough energy means the body can transform and adapt better.
And then you can do more. And then when you can do more, you feel more accomplished. And when you can feel more accomplished, you feel better about yourself. And hence, you want other people to get lifted up as well. And therefore, you help other people. You're kinder to other people. That all makes sense. I have to ask this question, though, because I know most of our listeners are endurance athletes. They are, long distance runners.
Or some.
It used to be mainly endurance. When we came up with Ketone Ester, it was mainly performance based, and that was why, even though it was expensive, it tastes bad.
Yep.
We were still selling loads of it because all these endurance athletes were using it because they were seeing benefits for it. But then, as we branch out to therapeutic areas, to metabolic health, and people who want to use it on a daily basis, then they're like, hold on a minute. I can't drink this every day. I can drink this before training and for race.
You have to be a crazy billionaire to be able to do that.
Exactly.
With the old stuff, but this new stuff is much more affordable.
Exactly. So that was why we shifted. So, we still have a lot of people who are following us and listening to us who are endurance. So my question to you is that in your book, and as you were talking about HIIT and REHIIT, do you propose or do you recommend sort of long period of time of slower, steadier, sort of low state cardio, right? Because you didn't mention them. And we talked about this on the show with Dr. Luisa Nicola, where she shared a study that shows at least 45-50 minutes, 3 times a week of zone 2 cardio increased mitochondrial biogenesis. What's your comment on that?
I actually report on the same studies in the book. It's one of the biohacks for cardiovascular. But my lens is different than endurance athletes. So I want to be like full disclosure here.
Yeah.
When I was 16 and I was getting really fat, I had a specialized mountain bikes, one of the first ones they ever made. I rode a Cannondale road bike in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Every weekend I would ride 30 to 60 miles to try to lose weight. And I was a roadie. I've done the Turquoise Trail, which is one of the most difficult 75-mile races because of the amount of hills. So I was an endurance athlete. I was a fat-ass endurance athlete, and it didn't work no matter what I ate. I just want to be really clear about that. Okay. And it feels good, and you get endorphins, and you can bonk, and I've lived on all of that stuff. And that feeling of clarity you get when you get the opiates, it's legit. Okay. So there are reasons to do endurance athletics. Longevity isn't one of them. The primary study there's 1 or 2 pieces I came across in my anti-aging book that showed that extreme endurance might lengthen telomeres, but there's a lot easier ways to take less time to lengthen telomeres. There's some injectable peptides, for instance, that you might want to consider because it's a lot less time to do that. So my lens is this. The vast majority of human beings do not exercise at all. And the reason they don't do it is because of biological laziness, which is built into our cells, which is fine. And they don't do it because the return on investment is shitty on traditional exercise. Now, if you get an opiate high from endurance stuff, or you just love it, even if it's without the opiates, the return on investment is higher for you. But you are a rare breed. The vast majority of humans are like, I am out of shape because I don't have time to. I have a family, I have responsibilities, I have a commute and all this. And those of us, especially without kids who are younger, say, bollocks, you could make time. And try that when you have a 6-month-old throwing up on your face when you're going to work out. It actually doesn't work, especially for new parents. So we are squeezed for time by life. And if we had extra time, we might have higher return activities to do. And if for you, the highest return is training for an endurance event, go for it, man. I love that. Just be fully biohacked when you do it because you'll win. And in the book, like, okay, here's what you do. Step 1 is rehab training because it takes you 5 minutes 3 times a week, and your VO2 max goes up by 12% in 6 weeks. Like, it's nuts, right? Now, the next thing that I recommend doing is to do zone 2 training if you're willing to invest 50 minutes 3 times a week and you have a heart rate monitor. So you got to spend money and time. There's a lot of people, if they had 3 hours a week, they would choose to meditate because their VO2 max was good enough. And now, like, let's assume we're not in a world of unlimited time and resources, because we're actually not. Now, if you had a choice between doing zone 2 training and lifting heavy, even for just a few minutes, or using one of the technologies for putting on muscle, I would argue, even from a mitochondrial biogenesis perspective, you should lift heavy before you do zone 2 training, as long as you did your rehit first, right? So we're getting down to what is the path that gives you the highest possible return. And the path is different because your goals and our endurance athlete friends' goals and my goals are different. So I teach people, in fact, there's a survey, it's on daveasprey.com, and a survey that's part of coming into Upgrade Labs. What matters to you? Because that totally changes it. And then we have an AI algorithm that guides you to know which of the interventional technologies we have, which ones do you use in what order to get to your goal fastest based on where you are today. Because if I have that endurance athlete come in and he's blown out because he ran a marathon and a triathlon the day before because it was a light day, right? And he says, well, today I want to get swole. I'm like, dude, electrically, no, you're blown out. I can see it in your dehydration levels, your inflammation levels. We're putting you on a full recovery protocol because your body actually cannot adapt to more inputs. It turns out the aggressive bodybuilders and endurance athletes and guys like me, entrepreneurs, were all the most likely to come in and say, give me more, when what we needed was the downside of the curve to reset the system so it can take more inputs. We're good at throwing stuff at ourselves. We're bad at catching it and holding on to it long enough for it to sink in. And so that's why I structured the book this way. You got to pick your goal. I don't think zone 2 training is worth it for most people until they've done something for muscles and probably something for their mitochondria.
That's the good question. I mean, good answer. Thank you very much, because you pointed out a really good point, which, when you said most of the time is the question is not whether is resistance training better than the zone 2 cardio or vice versa, is which one do you want to choose if you have limited time in the day? Yeah. And I personally struggle with myself, right? I have an hour and a half to gym, right? Do I want to do the cardio today, or do I want to do the resistance training today? So, and then it all falls down to your goals.
I've done zone 2 training at least twice. And
in your life?
I have at least 40 polar heart monitors because people keep sending them to me, and I'm a biohacker. Like, I have a box of them at my house. I don't particularly love putting them on and syncing them up with my phone and all that crap, right? And I actually don't really like cardio. And I get plenty of cardio from rehit. So that's enough. And I'd rather, for mitochondrial biogenesis, I'd rather get in my cryotherapy chamber and do 3 minutes of that and maybe hop in a sauna. Because when I'm in the sauna, I can actually be on the phone with someone, right? And if I turn on the video settings, I make a lot of money on OnlyFans. And so,
that was sneakily snuck in. It was.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like he's got a point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm probably really on with my team. And it's one of those things where it's okay to just honor, you know what? My body, my operating system, it didn't want to do that. And it's also okay to say, you know what? For my goals and my metabolism, this is necessary. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it religiously. I did that. That's my 702 hours in the gym. I just did shit that didn't work, right? And maybe it actually did work because I could max out the machines. I'm sure I was better off for having done it than not having done it. But I was overtrained, and it didn't work. What I should have done was a very, very different course. If I could have gone back, and I write about this in the book, and I'd have understood these 5 domains, I would have said, well, my real goal is to get my energy back, not to get swole. I just figured like healthy. So if I lift weights and run, I'll be healthy, right? But that's what most people think.
Yeah.
And your audience with endurance athletes, I love endurance athletes, and I've done specific podcasts for them using biohacking techniques. And I think there's a great argument for starting out with ketones and starting out actually with baking soda and amino acids. And one of the things you can do that's remarkable is you can raise ketones even in the presence of L-glutamine, which is a very powerful exercise thing, but L-glutamine will pull you out of ketosis faster than anyone's business unless you have Ketone-IQ. So if you were to take baking soda and Ketone-IQ and L-glutamine and D-ribose and go to the starting line, just try it. Like, that really works. But then halfway through the race, yes, you take another Ketone-IQ and you take maltodextrin or just straight up glucose, whatever way you like, that'll bring it in, and probably a little bit of chromium and vanadium, and of course electrolytes the entire time through with lots of sodium, and watch what happens to your times. You'll absolutely destroy. And I first came up with that protocol without the Ketone-IQ because it didn't exist in 1999 for a semi-pro cyclist I worked with. And he comes back the next day, he's like, Dave, I got my best time ever, and my heart rate was 20 beats a minute lower. Like, what did you put in my stuff? Oh, there was citrulline in there too. You might want to try that.
Okay, guys, for you guys who are listening, please do try this protocol. Come back, comment on, what your results are. If you find anything, useful, or if you are thrilled with it, please let us know.
So I just I love endurance stuff because it's a hack, and your acid levels go up, and you take the baking soda to deal with that. And a lot of this for me came from high altitude mountaineering, which is a similar thing. It's not the same level of intensity, but the biological things that you can do to feel good at altitude are pretty incredible. There's other mitochondrial stimulators you can put in there that will further improve it. So you can hack that stuff. In fact, I would argue if you don't hack that stuff, you're much more likely to be damaged by long-term endurance. But if you hack it properly, then you're better off. So I don't go into that level of detail here. I do talk about 2 big things that endurance athletes and everyone else needs in the book. And these are things that are missing from even a lot of the world of biohacking, despite my best efforts. And these are supplements that we all need to be taking because every biohack and every training thing and everything just works more easily. They reduce friction. One of them is we're all mineral deficient because food doesn't have minerals anymore, because the soil doesn't have minerals anymore, because animals aren't pooping on the soil. We broke the sacred cycle of animals poop makes soil. Healthy soil makes healthy plants. Eat healthy plants and eat animals that eat healthy plants. We took the animals out of that, and that's broken it. So now those things you eat just don't have minerals. And if they do, it doesn't matter because you're eating plants. And plants, and here I write about it, plants are sucking specific minerals out of your body via different pathways. It's how they protect themselves. So if you can assume that your food doesn't have enough minerals and you're losing more minerals because you're eating more plants than we used to, then you're mineral deficient. And if you're mineral deficient, you cannot make ATP as well. Mm-hmm. You cannot fold proteins as well. You cannot adapt as well. And since what I'm teaching you to do is get a signal in to cause adaptation, how about we'll take our macro minerals, and then what's even worse now is trace and ultra trace minerals. That's why Danger Coffee, my new coffee brand, the coffee has a therapeutic dose, a large dose of trace minerals in it. So when you brew the coffee, it affects how the coffee enters the body. But these are minerals in a very specific form that can enter your cells, and it includes electrolytes and ionic trace minerals. So when you brew the coffee, you're getting your dose of these, and your body's like, why does this coffee feel so good? It's because your body needed the minerals, and that improves your performance, and actually in very noticeable ways. So that's one way of getting them. You take pills and electrolytes. So anyone listening, you need to load up on these. And if you're using ketones regularly, your demand for minerals actually goes up, especially salts. So you should be using more salts, which I'm certainly not afraid of. I love sea salt. Yeah. So this is important. And the second thing is vitamin DAKE, which is DAKNE. And this is a formula I put together for Upgrade Labs. But if you take minerals without fat-soluble vitamins, and specifically those 4, those control where minerals go in the body and how they stay there. So if you take vitamin D without vitamin K2, geez, haven't you been listening for the last 10 years when I've been talking about that? K2 will stop vitamin D from calcifying your tissues. You really need to do that. But vitamin A also works in partnership with vitamin D to keep the right minerals where they need to go. And vitamin E rounds that off. Vitamin E has to do with zinc getting into the right cells as well. So when you put all these together, you get DAKE, which is terribly, terribly important. So if you just took 2 vitamins and nothing else, don't take a fancy nootropic, even though I'm a huge fan of those.
Yeah.
Actually take minerals, trace minerals, and vitamin DAKE. And you can do it with dangercoffee.com, or you can do it without that. I don't care. Just take them. You'll be better at everything you do.
There you go. Tips from Dave here. So I want to respect your time. I know you have to go somewhere soon. One last question to wrap this all up. Where do you think is the future direction of biohacking? Where is this going? And let's wrap that up.
I love it. So the definition of biohacking is change the environment around you and inside of you so you have full control of your own biology. And there are, I think in my book before the last, I talked about all these different areas. There's an area of light hacking that's getting really, really powerful. And I go in the book about some of the future of this, and I talk about that, I think, in the last chapter. And there's 2 things that are going to happen. One is we're going to start using AI to get targeted signals in at all these different levels of biohacks. So exactly the right amount of cold for you, exactly the right amount of this kind of light for you, for this outcome. So personalization is happening. And then AI is making a huge difference. The biggest thing, though, is the spiritual side of our existence is becoming more and more apparent to a lot of people. There are hard paths of spiritual progress, and there are easy paths of spiritual progress. Even Buddhism, they recognize a fast path, a medium path, and a slow path. So we are using biohacking for spiritual states. That's what my 40 years of Zen neurofeedback company does. It basically high-end entrepreneurs and celebrities and high-end athletes come there, and they edit their own brain, and you have a spiritual experience when you do that. So we are now getting to the point where we can say this breathing technique, this meditation technique, this neurofeedback, this brain tap session is going to allow you to access states that were previously like locked levels of a video game for you. And this is a part of biohacking, and it's a massively important one, and it's the most fun one, and that's why I'm bringing neurofeedback into Upgrade Labs as a part of the strategy. It's time for everyone to have access to these new levels.
There you go. Personalized biohacking, as well as the role of AI in the future of biohacking. Thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule to join us today. If our listeners want to learn more about you, guys, the book is called Smarter, Not Harder. Where can they find you otherwise?
You can find me at daveasprey.com. And I would just ask you right now, if you find my work has helped you over the years, if you would do me the favor of ordering the book now so that other people can find it, I would be very grateful. So thank you in advance.
There you go. If you guys enjoy this episode, leave us a review. And if you guys have any follow-up questions, or even try out the protocol, give us any feedback, please write comment on our episode. Thank you for listening. Until next time.